Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to yet another episode, another special episode of Unbreaking Science. This evening is January 30th, 2020. I am absolutely delighted to bring one of my favorite people on. I don't play favorites, but I love Bernadette. I just adore Bernadette Pager. How are you doing?
Aw, I'm good, Jack. Right back at you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to kick it tonight. We're going to get under the hood of some of CBC's unwarranted, unfounded, reckless, uh, bold assertions that they have and claims that they have made about the safety of vaccines. To talk about a few things, but before we go into that, let's back up a little bit and let's reminisce. So here I am
Okay.
online, an innocent young middle-aged guy posting to my delight all of these blog articles that I'm writing. And as social media allows you to see who likes, follows, whatever, I tune into these two ladies, very elegant, sweet ladies, who are talking about how my message seems useful, but gosh, all those typos are so annoying.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you passed the test, though, Jack. When somebody gives you praise and constructive criticism, and you very humbly accept both, and and make some changes and decide to work with these two people, it just shows the nature of your character and the nature of you as a scientist. And so, yeah, it wasn't an intentional test of your character, but you passed with flying colors.
That's good. So it's not actually learned helplessness then. I really count on a lot of people, a surprising number of people that give me really critical feedback on my blog articles, on everything that I work on. And of course, you turned into quite a colleague of mine. You've edited major works of mine, major important reviews. And we've co-authored a few things. We've been censored by the United
Mhm.
States government for saying things that are too dangerous, too risky for the average American Joe. So, excuse me, I
Yeah.
have a little crud, but
What are we
the
doing,
average
Jack?
American, I know, what are we doing? What do you have to say that's so dangerous about the MMR vaccine, along with me, that they have to say, nope, sorry,
Hmm.
average Joe, you can't read what Jack and Boots have to say. This is not right.
Hmm.
Go away, Jack and Boots, go back
Hmm.
under this, wherever you came from, just go away. Just stop talking. So
Yeah.
I'm so
You should
happy.
probably tell listeners that you should tell listeners that Bernadette is Boots. That's my nickname that escaped.
I figure by our 100th
My family
episode,
nickname.
by the time we get to our 100th episode of having you on as a regular, yeah, people will understand who Boots are. But where did you get your
Yeah.
nickname? Do you want me to tell them, or do you want to tell them?
Oh, do you know? I
Oh,
didn't
yes, I
know.
do. Yes, I do.
Well,
Well, when
you go ahead, I'll see.
well, should I get my guitar? So
No,
when you were
no.
young, you were of that particular decade where young ladies wore go-go boots, and you loved wearing your go-go boots.
Um,
Is that right?
that is true. I did have go-go boots, but that's not where I got my name.
Mm.
And my mama at one time was a go-go dancer.
Ah,
Yeah, it's pretty
I'm.
cool. But my grandmother's name was Boots or Bootsy. And
Mhm.
then when I was born, for some reason, I got to be Little Boots,
Ah, okay.
even though I ended up being taller than her because she was only 4'11".
Hmm.
So she's Boots and I'm Boots. And so
Dun
it's a
dun
family
dun
name.
dun
But
dun
yeah,
dun 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 dun.
yes,
Yeah.
Nancy Sinatra. That is my song, and I hear that in my head when I march the halls in Olympia, and the time I was in D.C. Yeah, these boots are made for walking. That's me. Yeah,
We're gonna get to some earbuds. We're gonna put some friendly, happy music in there.
yeah,
Anyway,
I like that.
so Here's your tag, Bernadette Pager, Informed Choice Washington at informedchoicewa.org. A really
Mhm.
super voice for medical freedom, informed choice, and rational thinking. And here you are
Yep.
now. Look, you've made it the big time. You're at the WWDNYK studios in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on the show Unbreaking Science with your host, Dr. James Lyons-Weiler. So, we've done all our duties here. Let's get down to business. What should we talk about today? Where do you want to start?
Well, why don't we start with that fabulous CBC show that they went undercover to catch all of us just saying ridiculous things, which they
Okay.
failed to do. Um, and instead, they aired a whole episode of ridiculous things that they said.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start here. Let's fade to that.
At this anti-vax rally in Washington.
It's the most significant medical issue in society today is the injury from vaccinations.
This is a war for our children. This is a war for their minds, for their bodies.
With many making false claims about the harm vaccines can cause.
I know that it can cause allergies, autoimmune issues.
There's spectrum autisms,
eczema, seizures. These are things that are affecting children.
There's no evidence to support any of the concerns.
Timothy Caulfield, public health expert and author of a book debunking vaccine myths.
And not only is this isn't even speculative, this is what the science says.
Let's go through some of the claims. Allergies,
No evidence to support it,
autoimmune disease.
but no evidence.
What about seizures?
There are rare risks where kids do have seizures. You have to remember that kids can get that kind of seizure from a variety of ailments.
Fact, side effects are very rare. For every million vaccinations, only 1 to 2 severe allergic reactions. Despite these stats, nearly half of Canadians have concerns about vaccine safety. And according to the World Health Organization, that's known as vaccine hesitancy.
So, are we just crazy anti-vaxxers who don't know anything whatsoever? That person who was speaking, the man by the way, his name is Timothy Allen Caulfield. He's a Canadian professor of
Yeah.
law at the University of Alberta. He's a research director of its Health Law Institute and current Canada Research Chair in Health Law Policy.
Oh, good
This is
grief.
straight out of Wikipedia. He specializes in legal policy and ethical issues, medical research, and its commercialization. In addition to professional publications, he's the author of several books, one of which was just mentioned in the clip there. I take it on the chin all the time for promoting my books. All the time. You're just out there trying to sell your book on Ebola. That's why you orchestrated the next Ebola outbreak, Jack. You did that. And you are just trying to make money when you write 16 chapters on 16 different topics in healthcare and medicine, right? And you're promoting yourself to make money off of for reading 2,000 studies on autism. That was a lot of fun, I'll tell you what. But Timothy Caulfield said some astounding things in that segment. Astounding for the position that he has and the things that he's allegedly knows. Um, let's get into it.
It's
Let's get
an
into it.
outright blatant lies. I mean, it's absolutely absurd that he would say such a thing. It would take anybody of journalistic integrity, what, a minute, 2 minutes, to learn that there is evidence that vaccines can and do cause these things. I mean, it might be disputed how often they are caused, the breadth and depth of these, but for him to deny how do you get away with lying like that? It's like, who do you go to
Well, I'm not sure if he's
lock this
lying.
guy up?
I'm not sure if he's lying because, he is a member of the Royal Society of Canada and the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences, and he's a member of the Task Force on Ethics Reform at the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. I think.
So do we just, if he's not lying, okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He's not lying. Then I don't, it's bad enough for me to call somebody a liar, but now you're asking me to say, okay, maybe he's stupid. I don't know. Can he not do research? Does he not know who Charles Richet is? Does he not understand the nature of injection can lead to hypersensitivity reactions, that this has been known for more than 100 years? I mean, I'm not quite sure what to ascribe it to. It's either
Well,
ignorance or intentional lying. Which is
I
it?
want to be perfectly clear here. However, we're talking about Dr. Caulfield, and I don't want anyone on any side of this issue to feel like we're singling him out. We didn't put him in the CBC documentary that specifically attacked me, specifically attacked Dell, specifically attacked Bobby and Dr. Wakefield. He specifically stepped up to put himself into that CBC documentary,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
specifically singled him out. And here he is, current Canada Research Chair in Health Law and Policy, and we're not going to just arm wave here. This is not a shallow thing for us to say,
No.
where's this guy coming from? We're going to go in deep.
Yeah.
I mean, some things I know about his personal life, right from Wikipedia. He suffers from motion sickness, which is one of the
Is
reasons
this
he
a trusted
abandoned.
source, Jack?
He suffers from motion sickness, which is one of the reasons he abandoned a fledgling career as a rock musician. What's the relevance? He is a bit of a germaphobe. Quote, I hate sharing food and I'm not good with hugs. This is from his book Germs, A User's Guide to Cheating Death. This is a germaphobe. A self-proclaimed germaphobe.
Okay, but I'm going to stop you right there, Jack.
Okay.
Because I don't like to make it personal, which is why I said I feel really uncomfortable calling him a liar, because I don't like to use such names, but I don't know how anybody in his position with his education could say what he said unless he's lying. The other thing, would be to say he doesn't know what he's saying, that he's ignorant. And I don't like to name call either, but that is the limit I will go. I don't like to call names. I don't want to call him a germaphobe. He's entitled to whatever his background is, but he put himself in a position career-wise to be an expert, and people look to him for guidance. And that is where I feel comfortable calling him out.
Right. And that's why I
So
said,
that's just me.
Well, and me too. I agree 100%. This is, no matter what we do, no matter what we say, this is going to come across as a personal attack on him, because that's the only defense that they're going to have. We really don't care whether he has a failed rock musician career. We really don't care that he prefers beer to wine. We really don't care that he can't live without coffee like me. But what we do care about, what I care about, I think it says a lot that he's a germaphobe. If you think about it for a minute, I mean, I didn't do this research before the show. I pulled up Wikipedia. I found the personal life thing in real time, and I'm reading it. This is public information on Wikipedia, public information from his book. So it's not personal. So they can't say that we're attacking him. I just want to get that out of the way and point out that we're not attacking Dr. Caulfield. If we were to attack him, we would make fun of the fact that he's a germaphobe, talking about the importance of vaccines, and have a whole heyday about that. I'm not doing that.
So, how would his being a germaphobe prevent him from understanding that the active injection with a protein substance can lead to an allergic reaction, or to the development of allergies? I'm not quite sure that the two go together. Like, he's so afraid of germs that he is not willing to admit to the public that these products can and do lead to these things, because he's so afraid of germs that he doesn't want anybody to skip a vaccine, or what?
The reason why I thought it was important to bring up at that point in time, it's like, okay, well, vaccines are supposed to prevent viremia, the growth and development of viruses once they're in your body. They're supposed to limit the infection from bacteria. Right, they're supposed to do that. And as a germaphobe, he should understand that vaccines don't put a magic bubble around you. You still are in contact
Yes.
with viruses. You're still in contact with the measles, mumps, rubella, pertussis, okay, diphtheria, all of it. You're still in contact with thousands and thousands of microbes all day long, no matter how clean you think you are, no matter, okay. But I'm just wondering if that primal fear that he has of germs makes it so that he cannot literally logically see that it would be okay to have an infection once in a while and get natural immunity, that he would rush to hide behind the shield of vaccines at all costs, including the cost to being able to read about asthma being caused or allergies being caused by vaccines in the scientific literature, as I have done. So I'm speculating, right? And I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he takes care of his family, and I know that he's made a career. What his name is? He's made his name busting celebrities for having health advice and going after Deepak Chopra. So he's playing the role of the standard bearer of standard allopathic mantra, right? The religion of allopathy. This is the only way you can be healthy. And anybody that goes into any other non-allopathic, he's going to pull them back into his lane. That's where he's made his career. He sells his books that way. And I hope his books sell really well, because people need to eat food and pay their mortgage. That's fine. I'm not criticizing him for wanting income or fame or any of that stuff that might be attracting this man to put himself in the position, right, where, I don't know, I think 2 million Canadians and maybe 4 million American U.S. citizens. I shouldn't say American, as I've made clear. I understand there's many American countries. I'm not going to be criticized for being that ugly American. But he has put his name on the fact that vaccines do not cause allergies. Vaccines do not cause asthma. Vaccines only rarely cause seizures. And people have to understand that other things can cause seizures too, as if the risk to the individual who is going to develop seizures from vaccines is not important to that individual. Yeah. So let's get in deep. What do you want to? You want to go to your PowerPoint next?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just show what he should have known, or what he should know. If he's going to put himself out there as an expert, this is what an expert should know about the vaccination process.
That's right. So we'll go to the first slide.
Yeah, that was the show, if anybody wants to go find it. It's on YouTube.
Okay, so that's the name of the show.
And they changed the name, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, yeah. They did. What was the name initially?
Debunking Anti-Vaccination Myths. And then it went to Anti-Vaxxers Exposed.
I guess in their test market, it didn't go very well. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So am I going to read this? So undercover reporters posed as vaccine safety advocates when speaking to individuals at a vaccine injury awareness event at Washington. As is standard with major media today, the episode used pejorative and inflammatory languages, making it clear that CBC has chosen a pro-vaccine stance and will not undertake much needed in-depth investigation. The episode that aired was at the level of rhetorical sound bites, providing no evidence to back claims made by reporters or guests. Among other major concerns, a serious breach of journalistic integrity occurred when the clearly audible words of a scientist were flashed on the screen in text, which said the exact opposite. This presentation addresses a specific 2-minute segment that highlights the need for unbiased investigative journalism. Now, those of you that can read what's on the screen, I changed a word because I haven't edited Bernadette's slides here. It says an advocate. I prefer scientist. I'm sure Bernadette would have edited that if I asked her to.
Well, yeah, this is still the draft stage, so I will go in and change it to scientist. I think that makes it more accurate and
sure. So see what I just did there? The irony is that the words on the screen say one thing and I read another. So
Right.
That's so
But we're
funny.
discussing it, and we're discussing why you did it.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. So, right. So let's talk about that for a minute. So, for those of you that don't know, I was at this event, and many people were at this event, at the Vive after party event. And this man came up to me and he said, "Hey, how can we get you to come out to? Oh, great speech on the mall today," he said. "I'm an activist from the western provinces of Canada, and we're trying to get organized out there. How can we get you to come out? You know, I forget where he said, Alberta or something like that." And it was just a great place. And I said, "I don't charge." And he goes, "Oh, really?" And then I said, and he cut these words out. I go, "Yeah." He goes, if you want to support IPAC, which is really critically important, he should have included this is the standard media technique of taking things out of context. If you want to support IPAC, I can come out and do a science day and I can educate people, and I would host an event. IPAC would host an event. We would shouldn't have said charge, but we would charge. I said charge a fee. We should collect donations, and at all the IPAC events that we do, I always tell the volunteers, if people come in and they can't afford the donation, if they can afford $1, fine, great, thank you. If they can afford nothing, fine, great, thank you, right? And then they're welcome. So this all got twisted and turned around into a workaround, so that I said specifically, I can't be paid to go educate legislators because I'm not a paid lobbyist. So they twisted this all around, took it out of context. And what Bernadette's referring to is when I said that there is no quid pro quo, I always say this to make sure that people like Bernadette, can you control what I have to say when I come out and speak to legislators? You don't control what I say.
no,
No, you don't
no.
control what I say. But if I do an IPAC Science
I
Day,
try. No.
yeah, no, absolutely not. And good luck anybody that tries to control what I have to say. I might
Yeah,
ask for
no kidding.
feedback. I might ask for feedback. It's fair enough that I get critical feedback from what I'm asking for. But a lot of what I say is off the cuff, and it certainly is self-programmed. So anyway, enough about me. Let's go back to this analysis that you've done. We saw the clip. We played the clip. And in this presentation, we will address the claim that there is no evidence that vaccines can cause allergies, autoimmune disease, a concerning number of febrile seizures that can lead to serious long-term health issues. We will also address the problem of attempting to count the number and rate of vaccine injuries. So according to Timothy Caulfield, vaccines do not cause allergies, they don't cause autoimmune disease, and they certainly don't cause a concerning number of febrile seizures that can lead to long-term health issues, right? Okay, so allergies. The ability for vaccines to induce allergies have been known since at least 1902. The word anaphylaxis was actually invented to describe the reaction to injected substances. So, wait a minute. Anaphylaxis. Timothy, Tim, buddy, really? Anaphylaxis. Did you
Yeah.
forget about anaphylaxis? I mean, okay, go ahead. What do you have
Yeah.
to say about
Yeah.
anaphylaxis?
Me? I mean, Charles Richet said it right there. I mean, he knew the hypodermic needle had been invented, and they were injecting vaccines into people, and they were seeing and animals, and they were seeing them become hypersensitive to the ingredients. I don't know how to explain it any more clearly than that. And over the years, they tried to change formulations a little bit, and they know about the gelatin allergies. They've sort of admitted that one, but it's just absurd that he would deny sort of. Now we know the science is never settled, but so far, no science has ever disproved the fact that an injection substance will, in some people, cause these hypersensitivity reactions. So there we are. That's where the science currently sits, and if he can disprove that, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, but they invented a whole word for this reaction when you inject foreign substances into the human body and the
Yeah.
body has an allergic reaction. So there goes number one. We've debunked Timothy Alan Caulfield's first claim that vaccines do not cause allergies.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
must be. Okay, let's go back to let's go to the next one. Science has clearly shown for more than a century that some people will develop hypersensitivity allergies to vaccine ingredients. So look at these common ingredients in vaccines. You've got dairy proteins, egg proteins, gelatin, yeast proteins, MSG, human fetal proteins, animal fetal proteins, insect proteins, viral proteins, bacterial proteins, aluminum. And that's before we get to the other stuff. Those are all proteins.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just stop right there.
Mm-hmm.
Do people have dairy allergies? Are people allergic to eggs?
Do they?
Is there anyone on the
Well, I
planet
have
allergic
an
to gelatin
EpiPen
or
and
yeast?
Yeah. I have an EpiPen and Benadryl in my purse at all times because my son is of the generation and the sensitivity, genetics and sensitivity, that he does have anaphylactic allergies to the food components of vaccines and then as we get through the slides, you'll see how others can develop even if it wasn't in the vaccine. One of the things I recently learned, Jack, is that you can become allergic to aluminum.
Yes.
And I also, and is it Vinu, forgive me if I can't remember how to pronounce his last name. Do you know who I'm talking about? He has shown that you can become allergic to the actual antigen. Like you can become allergic to the flu. So not only do you catch the flu, but you also are allergic to the viral proteins of the flu, which makes it much more severe.
So 100% correct that when you have foreign proteins that you have an allergy to outside of vaccination, if you put those proteins into a vial and inject it into the human body, the magical dust and fairy farts that make vaccines 100% safe, right, take over, and they magically stop the human immune system from reacting to these proteins in any way that is of harm to human health. Is that right? So it's magic, right?
So, right, but the way you worded that at the beginning, I want to make sure that we're wording correctly. Is you don't necessarily start. My son at 2 months old was not allergic to dairy and eggs, and
Right.
various things. That was his first vaccine with an aluminum adjuvant that had the dairy and egg components. The very act of injection sensitizes you, and then the next reaction enhances that. And so then by the time he got around to being 8 months old and ingested those proteins for the first time and went into anaphylactic shock, so it was the vaccine. You can develop allergies from other environmental reasons and causes. This is not the only way to get it, but it is one very good way to do it. Such a good way to do it that scientists in the lab, when they want to create an allergy model, inject mice with a protein and an aluminum adjuvant. And to make it really kick in, they usually throw in a little pertussis because for some reason that seems to enhance the whole allergic response.
Wait a minute. You sound like you know what you're talking about. You sound like you sound like you might know a thing or two about what vaccines are and how they work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been down the rabbit hole. It's.
So you're killing me here.
I mean, yeah.
You're killing me here. I thought. Wait. I thought you were a mom. I thought you were one of these crazy mothers that didn't really know what they were talking about. Okay, so let's go back to the next one here. You're 100% correct that you can develop aluminum allergies. There's an actual patch test. So why in the world, if we know that you can be allergic to aluminum, and 60% of aluminum vaccines, 60% of the CDC vaccines contain aluminum hydroxide as an adjuvant, then if we have an aluminum patch test, why are we not? Wouldn't it make sense to test the kid to see if he's allergic to aluminum before you give him 3 or 4 or 5, 6 aluminum containing shots on makeup day, catch-up day?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. and
Should we
continue
screen?
to test as they go along to see if they have developed these. And one of the things that I find absolutely absurd is they will like maybe admit, yeah, you can get a rash, an aluminum contact allergy, they say,
Yeah.
as if that's really like only contact allergy. All the other forms of allergic reaction aren't going to happen. And
Yeah.
if you can't see visibly what's happening, if the child at the time of injection doesn't drop to the floor, or they don't develop a rash, then gee, there must be nothing happening internally. The immune system isn't doing anything. It's not harming anything. It's all those big noceums that they like to deny are occurring, and it just doesn't make sense to me. If you can have if you've shown somebody has an allergy, like now they even say that if you've got an egg allergy, it's okay to get a vaccine that has egg in it, the egg proteins in it, because people aren't dropping dead when they get these vaccines.
It's okay
But what
because
does an immune system,
you know why it's okay? It's
what,
okay because you're
it,
usually vaccinated while you're in a medical setting, and they can recover you if you go into anaphylactic shock. That's why it's okay. That's literally their
well, that,
reasoning.
yeah,
I've looked into that. That's literally their
right,
reasoning.
right.
Don't worry about it. We've got
But
your
they
back.
don't,
If
yeah,
you have a deadly experience, it's just another
yeah,
billable service for us. We'll pull you back from the dead. You're going to be fine.
right. But
Way to
what they
go.
don't take into consideration and they refuse to look at is if you don't go into anaphylactic shock, does it still in any way harm your immune system to be injected with something you're already allergic to? What's the long-term impact of continuing to expose somebody to greater numbers of an injection is the most harsh way to be exposed to something you're allergic to.
Sure.
So what that your child didn't just go into shock in the office. What happens 2 months, 4 months, 6 months down the road? The one of the studies I've got on that slideshow is like they're talking about the delayed neurological reaction to the injection of some of these substances, but that's a little further down the road.
Okay. Well, I want to jump
Um,
to since we're talking about aluminum. I want to jump to synergistic
mhm.
toxicity, that we have aluminum adjuvants, which the job of an aluminum adjuvant is to excite the immune system in the presence of a foreign protein. So we have dairy
Mhm.
protein, egg protein, gelatin, yeast protein, MSG, human fetal proteins, animal fetal proteins, or just animal proteins like bovine serum or whatever, insect proteins, viral proteins, bacterial proteins. All of these different proteins are injected at the same time as aluminum adjuvant. And the
Mhm.
body, it's not as though the body goes, oh, you know what? This molecule of aluminum hydroxide is designed specifically to excite about this measles protein and this mumps protein and the rubella protein, but not all these other proteins. So we're not going to pay attention to all
But
these.
there's wait, hold on, Jack. We're going to be criticized because there's no aluminum adjuvant in the MMR. But if you get the MMR at the same time as the DTaP, then you're going to have aluminum in the presence
Oh, yeah,
of
yeah, yeah. You're
MMR.
right. You're right. My bad. Another mistake.
Okay.
That's like twice in 1 week, or twice in 2 weeks.
Oh no.
Yeah. Wow. Anyway, so
Yeah.
right. Thanks for correcting me on that. You're right. So there's no aluminum in MMR, but let's say in the Tdap, right? So there's no way that
Yes.
the human immune system, is going to go, all right, listen, the aluminum's going to just, you know, activate against one type of protein is the point. And if we
Yeah.
look at, talk about antibiotics for a minute.
Bless you.
Thank you. Talk about antibiotics for a minute. What are antibiotics doing in there?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. You probably know the science behind why vaccine designers would put an antibiotic in there.
I don't know. No, formaldehyde, okay, that's a toxin if it's on your floor.
Preservative?
Yeah, but it's a toxin if
Mm-hmm.
it's on your floor, and it's a problem for your baby if they're crawling on it, but you can, right. Polysorbate 80, people know about this, opens the blood-brain barrier. Specifically, it's like a soap. Amino acids, well, we kind of
Mm-hmm.
need those. Why is amino acids on this list?
I don't know.
Okay. And other processed chemical residuals. What is that? What are those? I don't know.
That, I took all of those from the CDC's vaccine excipient list, and that's how they worded it. Other
Okay.
processed chemical residuals.
That sounds
So that
safe.
could mean anything, you know.
That sounds
The
wonderful.
container it was mixed in might add, there was that one Italian study where they found like tungsten, all sorts of trace weird metals and things. So
Sure.
the equipment these things pass through, you can have nanoparticles end up in. And if you inject somebody with a nanoparticle, your body treats it differently, doesn't it? Hasn't there been a lot of really good science on the dangers of nanoparticles lately?
Yeah, we can talk about that. So what I'm trying to do here, Bernadette, is bring up to confirm just how bad Caulfield got this wrong through science. I went not to do this for Dr. Caulfield in response. I did this last year. Publicly funded science at IPAC, the Institute for Pure and Applied Knowledge, often causes me to go deep, deep, deep into the literature. And if I can find this table and look at these things, I can barely see it on my screen here. But let me see. We're looking at, does that say table 2? I think that says table 2.
I'm not sure.
Yes, this is table 2. So let's say all the science that Dr. Caulfield should read. Here's a reading list. These are autoimmune diseases produced by aluminum hydroxide in animals. Allergic asthma. The symptoms and manifestation? Asthma. 2 citations on that. Allergic rhinitis. Allergic rhinitis. Immune suppression. Allergic rhinitis. Allergic rhinitis. Allergic rhinitis. Bronchial asthma. Antiphospholipid syndrome. Collagen-induced arthritis. Severe destructive Lyme arthritis. Ovalbumin-specific IgG chymase is increased with atherosclerosis if you use aluminum hydroxide. Chronic prostatitis. Gastrointestinal allergy. Preceding asthma. Okay. Gastrointestinal allergy preceding asthma. You get a twofer. Hang on, I'll finish this list. Systemic lupus erythematosus. That's lupus. Brain gliosis, motor neuron disease, Sjorgen's syndrome, an autoimmune disease of the salivary gland, and, of course, numerous studies showing that you can get food allergies. What do you think of that?
Do we need to send a fax off to Dr. Caulfield and show him this?
I'll send him the whole review.
One thing I think that's really, it's really important to talk about, because they're always saying, well, the animal models were given such huge doses. That's not going to happen in humans because the doses. So some of these animal models, was the amount in human equivalent following CDC schedules sort of thing? How much more above that? Can you speak on that?
I can. So that's a great question. So when I first brought this up on social media, the vaccine risk denialist crowd jumped on me and said, no, wait a minute, Jack. We typically use 10,000 to 20,000 times the dose that you would ever see from a vaccine in a human. So, of course, I went to all of these studies and I downloaded the dosage that was used per animal. I retrieved the body weight of those animals at the ages that those studies were done, and I calculated the micrograms per kilogram dose. And then I calculated how many times larger that microgram per kilogram dose of aluminum hydroxide was compared to a 2-year-old getting a pertussis vaccine. And sometimes it's 5 times, sometimes it's 10 times, right? But these are in mice and rats over multiple doses. These studies use multiple doses. It was never 20,000 times, and it wasn't even one time 10,000 times. It was 9,996 or something like that times. So technically speaking, most of the time, it was larger than you would see from a single dose, but many times it was much lower than you would expect given this arm waving, oh, we
Mm-hmm.
always use these massive large doses. It's untrue. You can get these autoimmune conditions like lupus in mice, like
Mm-hmm.
asthma, allergic
Mm-hmm.
rhinitis, and so on, at doses that are within range of the CDC schedule, certainly within the CDC schedule, since we have 60% of the vaccines contain aluminum, and we get, what, 72 doses or
Mm-hmm.
something. So we're we're definitely within
Yeah.
range. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of scientific literature out there that Dr. Caulfield might be interested in. Maybe I'll send him. I think it's a good idea. I think I'll send him my review that was accepted in the
Mm-hmm.
Journal of Autoimmunity, but then they pulled it just before it went to publication using the excuse that they found a review copy of it on the IPAC website, considering it already published. So in this era of open science where we're supposed to be transparent, and I put it out there for peer review purposes, right? They said, nope, you already published
Mm-hmm.
it. Really? Okay. Sorry, that's not going to work. So let's see what else. What else did I bring in here? Oh yeah. So maybe I could do this. We have examples of the unfolded protein response in some of these conditions that we know aluminum hydroxide causes an unfolded protein response. So I'm focused in my research on ER stress and the unfolded protein response. And we can see this in ALS, we can see it in Guillain-Barré syndrome, we can see it in rheumatoid arthritis, and we can see it in lupus. Um, so I'm pretty sure that we have a plausible mechanism by which aluminum hydroxide could at least contribute, if not cause, contribute to. It is a causal factor, I think. And then the last one
Mm-hmm.
is autoimmune conditions that are reported, and this I love, reported after vaccination. These are scientific studies that did a study and found the type of vaccine, people developing cognitive dysfunction, glomerulonephritis, GBS, hypoinsulinism, rheumatoid arthritis, narcolepsy, autoimmune narcolepsy, 0% that there's a doubt. He needs to study the literature. This is unexcusable. Vaccine induced immune thrombocytopenic purpura. That's the specific term that they used in the study. Vasculitis, death, vasculitis, thrombocytic purpura, demyelinating disease, lupus, premature ovarian failure, increased brain aluminum, undifferentiated connective tissue disease, and so on. This is unexcusable. This guy's in charge of like everything in Canada about what's real science, apparently. Um, if you looked at his, what is this, Wikipedia account. Um, but I'm going to throw this back at. I think that this CBC um, news coverage, this documentary, so to speak, this hit piece that they did, is science exploitation. I think they're taking advantage of the ignorance of the public, and they're exploiting the ignorance of the public by putting an expert out there who's apparently a trusted expert and having him say things that are patently untrue to exploit the ignorance of the public and take advantage of it to trick them into thinking that vaccines are safe. I think that's science exploitation.
Yeah, but it's going to backfire because people can read and people can think, even moms. And when you have a so-called expert saying something so blatantly, provably false,
Yeah.
It's just going to heighten the distrust and it just shines a spotlight on, you know, we've got two things happening here. We've got the greed of the pharmaceutical industry. We know that. But one of the main things is we have governments who have decided they've put all their faith and trust in stopping communicable infections with these products called vaccines. And they decades ago decided that they could not release any information critical of vaccines, no matter how factual it was, because they didn't want to undermine the faith in the vaccine program. And so when you set out as a government policy to censor and withhold and to try to through social engineering and marketing, make people believe this with it not based on actual fact, this is where we end up. And it's liar, liar, pants on fire. Eventually, you get caught out because you have to lie bigger, bolder, and it just, they can't, the genie's out of the bottle now. Pharma went crazy with the 1986 Act. He took away liability. What did they think is going to happen? Human beings do not behave well in the absence of responsibility. And pharmaceutical companies, even when they are responsible, don't behave well. You take away the responsibility, what were they thinking? And then the government gives them carte blanche to do so because they're so afraid of people stopping using these flawed, dangerous products. So I don't know how they need to save face somehow. But right now they're refusing to give up. They're just like, they just think if they yell more and they say more, but I think it's going to wake people up.
So there's a huge literature on causality. One of the underlying causes of autoimmunity induced by vaccines is molecular mimicry. And you have this in your slide show. I fast forwarded to this because we're about here on this. And it says, from molecular mimicry and autoimmunity, published in the Journal of Autoimmunity, December 2018, additional striking data about the role of molecular mimicry in autoimmune diseases comes from studies of individuals post-standard vaccination, in other words, observational data. Thus, it has been suggested that patients receiving vaccines may develop autoimmune diseases. This is exemplified by a report that there is approximately a threefold increase for Guillain-Barré syndrome after vaccination following immunization of the H1N1 influenza vaccination. Do you know when they first observed Guillain-Barré syndrome following flu vaccine? This happened in
It's been a long time ago.
1976. The very first attempt to do a national program, they observed Guillain-Barré syndrome. Do you know when Guillain-Barré syndrome was acknowledged? Dr. Caulfield, acknowledged. Dr. Caulfield, acknowledged by the HRSA of the United States government and occurs on the list of vaccine injuries on a table that you don't have to fight tooth and nail for because they say, yep, the evidence is strong enough. Guillain-Barré syndrome happens after flu vaccine. Dr. Caulfield, that's an autoimmune disease. Look up Guillain-Barré syndrome. I'm sure there's plenty of publications written by plenty of scientists in Canada that will convince you that Guillain-Barré syndrome is in fact an autoimmune condition caused by vaccines without any issue. So, yeah, we're talking about people's lives here. We're talking about people becoming misled by your science exploitation to get them to get into the clinic and get the vaccine, develop Guillain-Barré syndrome, and not be able to walk and maybe die. Okay, so there you go. I'm a little upset when people are misleading people that way.
Isn't it criminal to lie to the public about something that could be a matter of life and death?
Well, I'm sure that he can always say it was just my opinion. He can always say it was just my opinion. He was there for his opinion. But when you have a video like the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia saying that you get more aluminum from water and food and anything made from water than you ever would from a vaccine to trick patients to come in off the street and get vaccinated, I think that's false advertising. There's a whole other area of law that should be explored there. But I want to focus on science exploitation because that's a really good word that we should all start using. Because when
Can you spell it for me?
I think Dr. Caulfield spells it science exploitation. If you read his Wikipedia article.
Science exploitation. Okay.
Yeah. I think Dr. Caulfield calls the misrepresentation of science or this making things sound science-y or making it seem like you're an expert in science for the sake of tricking people out of their money, science exploitation. And I think that's exactly what the pediatric industry does all the time by saying vaccines are safe and effective, by regurgitating, in the United States anyway, the CDC's mantra, vaccines are safe and effective. I'm pretty sure that's science exploitation. And we can cite Dr. Timothy Caulfield, and we can say that this kind of activity is science exploitation, a term coined by Dr. Timothy Caulfield, and thank him for it. I think that's what we need to do in the vaccine risk aware community. Okay, that's my recommendation. I'm going to start doing it. So, all right, where were we? We were talking about there's also a case to be made for the role of adjuvants that are used for such vaccination. The compound added to vaccines increase the response of the immune system to antigens. It has thus been suggested that the homology between the human proteome and the adjuvanted vaccine in a genetically susceptible host may increase the possibility for the induction of cross-reactive immune response that lead to AD. That's a weak statement. It's not just been suggested. It's absolutely been scientifically shown. There's cross-reactive antibodies, anti-ganglioside antibodies. There's cross-reactive antibodies to the hypocretin receptor in narcolepsy, in kids and family members sporadically across Europe who got the pandemics, I think it was, flu vaccine. Yeah, so there's stronger evidence than a suggestion. I mean, we have a very strong mechanism of biological molecular mimicry.
Yeah.
Let's see. So the federal government acknowledges, oh, here you go, that vaccines can cause autoimmune disorders. Oh, there you go. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder on this. I didn't know it was there. So here you go, Dr. Caulfield. Bernadette Pager, ICWA, she's your neighbor, come across the border, have some coffee, maybe Starbucks, and sit down, and she'll go through the vaccine injury table with you and show you exactly where an autoimmune disorder is found. This is incredibly misinforming the public to try to get them to think that vaccines are safe and effective for everyone. Okay, so what is FS? Febrile seizures. All right, let's go to that. All right, what's this article that you're citing here? Vaccines can induce febrile seizures. Parents should be informed that some vaccines could be associated with an increased risk of febrile seizures, particularly in children with personal family history of febrile seizures. Now, they're going to say, oh, it's genetic. But what if it's a genetic risk of febrile seizures following vaccines? It is highly recommended to choose vaccines with lower risk of developing febrile seizures and to administer those vaccines during the low-risk window of immunization schedules. Wow, wait a minute. If it's so important to modify the schedule to avoid febrile seizures, doesn't that imply that they're probably high enough in number that we want to modify our clinical approach to vaccination to reduce febrile seizures in infants? Let's look at those numbers. Bernadette pulled this together. MMR vaccine has a significantly higher risk of causing seizures than measles. This is physicians for informed consent. Seizures from the MMR vaccine occur about 1 in 640 children. Wow, that's a lot. Up to 2 weeks. So if you have 640 kids, one of them is going to have a seizure following MMR vaccine administration. I'm trying to fathom that means that MMR is safe. There is a 5-fold higher increase of seizures from the MMR vaccine than seizures from measles infection. And a significant portion of MMR vaccine seizures cause permanent harm. 5% of febrile seizures result in epilepsy. So this goes to the question of whether or not there's rarely an observation, Timothy Caulfield said, of febrile seizures. Well, he said seizures following vaccination. But people need to understand there's other things that also cause seizures. What does that have to do with vaccine-caused seizures? The fact that, all right, okay, I don't care where you stand on gun control, right? But people kill people with guns all the time, right? But they also don't worry about the deaths from guns because people also stab each other. And don't worry about the deaths from guns because people also strangle each other. And people also die from car accidents. And people die when they jump out of a plane without a parachute. This is not science. This is some distraction. Don't worry about this over here because it also happens over here. What's he saying?
And that's exactly what they do with the vaccines, the CDC and CHOP, everybody says about mercury and aluminum, oh, it's no big deal. You also get these poisons in all these other places, as if because you get poisoned over here, it's okay if your pediatrician also poisons you. Jack, I have to go get my power cord. So
That's
you
no problem. I'm
talk.
going to
I'll
go
be
on a
right
rant.
back.
I'm going to go on a rant right now. You go get your power cord.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about this idea that because you have chemicals that are known toxins in your environment, that the chemicals that are in vaccines don't matter. And what they're really trying to do is they're trying to get the human mind to accept that the risk of a problem from the amount of mercury or aluminum in a vaccine is on par with the risk of exposures from other sources, so it's okay. That's what they're really implying. But I always go back to this story in Allegheny County here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, when it was discovered that the water lines, had more lead in them, and the kids had more lead in them than Flint, Michigan, and how the Allegheny County Board of Health brought forward an expert from the Graduate School of Public Health at the University of Pittsburgh at a press conference who specifically stated that we don't have to worry about the lead in the water. This is lead now we're talking about, because there's more lead in the soil in these old homes and more lead in the paint chips in these old homes than there is in the water, or kids get more lead from those sources. And I'm thinking lead in the paint chips, lead in the soil, and lead in the water. So we're here instead of just lead in the water. It makes me think maybe we should be more worried about the fact that there's lead in the water, since so many kids live in an area where they're also exposed to other sources of lead. So don't worry about the mercury that's in vaccines, because there's also mercury in swordfish, there's mercury in tuna, there's mercury in the amalgam fillings. So we don't have to worry about the mercury in vaccines. We should be down here, mercury in vaccines, if there's no ambient lead exposure. But because of the ambient mercury exposure, because the mercury exposure is cumulative, now people will go haywire and they'll say, hey, don't worry about it. It's a different form of mercury. This guy's an idiot. He doesn't even understand the difference between methyl mercury and ethyl mercury. And I assure you that I can draw the formula. I can write out the formula for ethyl and methyl mercury. I did take organic and inorganic chemistry. So although I may appear like an idiot or I might look stupid, okay, don't worry about methyl mercury because you're getting more ethyl mercury. Why don't we do that? Don't worry about your methyl mercury that you get from the environment, from your fish or food, swordfish. Don't worry about the mercury in your teeth, because you also get some mercury of a different form in vaccines. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Non sequitur.
It's irrelevant. Well, and it's even more than irrelevant. It actually is relevant. It's relevant because, like you said, it's accumulative.
Right.
So why would you add even more? One of my favorite presentations or public comments I gave to our Washington State Board of Health recently was I read from the CDC's frequently asked question page. This is aimed at parents, and it made all these it says all these absurd things right on this page. One of the most absurd things it says is, but aren't there toxic ingredients in vaccines? And they said yes, but a tiny bit of a toxin doesn't hurt you. For instance, many people intentionally get injected with Botox, one of the most toxic substances on the planet, just to get rid of wrinkles. And so I looked up Allergan, the maker of Botox, and they've got a couple hundred lawsuits, or 1,000 or so lawsuits against them for hiding the fact that their toxin will travel to other parts of the body, and it can cause severe adverse reactions, even death. And so I told our Washington State Board of Health, I said, are they using Allergan as an example or maybe as their role model? because they're doing the same thing, right? It's just,
So
it's
the
that
logic.
whole page is so absurd.
Yeah, sorry about that. The logical fallacy that's made when somebody says, "Oh, don't worry, we use Botox. There's chemicals injected right into your forehead." That's called
Mm-hmm.
argument from ignorance. And
Mm.
Dr. Timothy Caulfield skewered anti-vaxxers by arguing from ignorance. 100%. I know he
Yeah.
didn't know that aluminum hydroxide is used to routinely and reliably and consistently cause allergic reactions and allergies in animals. But I know that, and I'm a scientist, and that's why I showed up. So let's see another
So
slide
we
that you.
shouldn't speak about what we don't know, right?
Yeah, we
I
should
mean,
say.
if you're putting yourself
Wait,
out there,
wait, wait,
position of
wait, 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 wait.
authority.
That's perfect. So look at this. Look at this. People are starting to catch on. Welcome to the WWDNYK studios, the What We Do Not Yet Know studios in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Yeah, if I don't know something, I'm going to say I don't know. If
Yeah,
I say something and I'm wrong, I'm going to publicly announce, listen, I made a mistake. All right? That's what I'm going to do.
me too.
Good.
Yes.
So, 1 to 2 in a million claim of severe allergic reaction. This is what you hear all the time. We always hear, oh, don't worry about vaccine injury. It's 1 in a million. But that's actually a malapropism and a misattribution, right? Because the calculations that you
Mm-hmm.
uncovered here is it's 1 to 2 million claim of severe allergic reaction. Severe, not things like eczema and asthma that might happen from vaccine, but severe allergic reaction. Now, asthma
Yeah.
is a very severe allergic reaction that could be caused by vaccines. 45 to 50
But
American citizens die every day from
yeah,
asthma. That's pretty severe.
I think. Yeah, I think I need to, again, this is a draft presentation I'm creating. I think I need to change the wording. I need to go back and exactly see what CBC says, because I
Sure.
believe they're talking about immediate severe, like you fall
Hmm.
over in the doctor's office,
Yeah, that's my point.
not development of severe allergic reactions. Those are 1 or 2 in a million.
No, you got this
And
exactly
even
right.
those add up, because how many shots are given a year in the United States? That adds up to, a fair number of people who will experience the most severe reactions out there. So,
Right.
yeah.
Your slide is great because it says it right at the bottom. Asthma, allergies, seizures, neurological disorders, autoimmune disorders, and other adverse reactions listed on the federal vaccine injury table, Dr. Timothy Caulfield, and on manufacturer product inserts are more common than immediate anaphylactic reactions by far. Absolutely. So when
Mm-hmm.
you hear
Mm-hmm.
someone say, don't worry about vaccine injury, 1 in a million, the risk of vaccine injury is 1 in a million. They're talking about severe allergic reactions, but they're list that math does not include all the other recognized, acknowledged vaccine reactions. And the way that
Mm-hmm.
long-term vaccine safety science is set up is they take a vaccine, they do 4 days to 5 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever follow-up, short term, and then they decide which adverse events occurred that are supposed to be due to the vaccine and reject the ones that they think
Mm-hmm.
weren't caused by the vaccine. And then they put the product out on the market. And through post-market surveillance studies, then they track it over time with observations from the public being the source of their information about vaccine injury. Science has not yet
Mm-hmm.
discovered all the vaccine injuries that are occurring because when it happens to the public and the public tries to report it, they say, no, it wasn't the vaccine because no science has shown that it was caused by that. It's
Mm-hmm.
perfect. It's a perfect exploitation. So what else you got? All right. So you say the true number of vaccine injuries is not known. How can you make vaccine injuries nearly impossible to track and count? This is what we just talked about. Perfect. 4 days.
And I
Right.
do have to give thanks to a mutual friend of ours. I don't know if she'd want me to, say her name here. I didn't ask permission, but
Okay.
a mutual friend of ours did help with a little bit of editing, and helped me with this particular list, which I like.
Awesome. Well, you make sure that you give her an Ebola fist bump for me, okay? Because
Yeah, I will.
we don't want to get coronavirus spreading around. So, step 1, set up pre-licensure safety studies with incomplete list of solicited known reactions. Solicited. These are the ones you're asking for. What about the ones you didn't ask for? What if you got a migraine on this, vaccine safety trial? You've got a follow-up for 4 days. What if you lost your appetite? What if your hair fell out? Well, no, science has never shown your hair fell out, so we didn't ask about that. This is great. They've got this thing covered. Compared product safety outcome only with similarly reactive products, not with the actual inert placebos. Exactly right. Use the aluminum adjuvant or another vaccine. We have ICANN to credit that. The ICANN Decide Network, that team did a deep dive and actually pulled out all the comparator groups for all the vaccines that are on the schedule. And nope, they're not using saline. Have sloppy safety surveillance once product is on the market? Absolutely. Doctors don't report it. Maybe 1% of vaccine injuries are reported, and there's no penalty for not reporting it. Yeah, make sure the reporting system is not automated and not mandatory. Have policy of voluntary investigation of reported injuries and death, done by the industry itself if they feel like it. Sounds good. So the person who you bought your cigarettes from is the one that's going to report whether or not you develop bronchial or asthma or lung cancer. Sounds good. Train doctors to dismiss adverse reactions as just coincidence, and we've seen plenty of that. We've actually seen that. But additionally, to ensure vaccine injuries can't be counted or proven, don't require vaccine manufacturers to investigate reports of adverse events. Per regulation, FDA requires vaccine makers to list on their inserts all adverse events reported to them for which there is some basis to believe. I see, but only for those for which there's some basis to believe there's causal relationship, but they don't require them to investigate. Now let's talk about that for a little minute, because I happen to know everybody that's reported their vaccine injury to VAERS, if everybody also reported it to the FDA then has to, this doesn't involve the CDC, doesn't involve HHS, the FDA then said, if you report it not to the FDA, if you report it to the vaccine manufacturer, if you call Merck and say, hey, your MMR gave my kid autism, then the vaccine manufacturer has to report those incidences that are reported to the FDA, not the CDC. And then the FDA says, did your clinical trial disprove that vaccine adverse event? And if they get enough of the reports, then Merck, Sanofi Pasteur, all of them, then could be held accountable by FDA to redo the vaccine safety science. So it turns out that reporting the vaccine adverse event, the public should report it to the vaccine manufacturer. This is something that came to me through Mary Holland and another person.
I think we need to do a campaign and get everybody to report.
Yeah. No, it says right on the vaccine insert, report it to the manufacturer or to VAERS, not just to VAERS. So now we know. Have all.
But a really key point here, Jack, is the fact that the FDA has specific regulations guiding what has to go on the materials on a product.
Yeah.
And only those adverse reactions for which there is some basis to believe there's a causal relationship.
Right.
Because we're always hearing from the pro-vaccine side that anything reported has to be on there, anything. And that is absolutely not true. It's only those things for which this is for all drugs, there is some basis to believe there's a causal relationship.
Sure.
So if it's on there may be a causal relationship. Doesn't mean it caused it, but nobody's done the science one way or the other. They're not made to do the science. It's a great way to put everybody in limbo, right? Yeah.
So
plausible deniability.
If everyone who developed seizures following a vaccine reported those seizures to the vaccine manufacturers, and the FDA started seeing thousands of reports of seizures, then the FDA's job is to say, did your science actually rule out seizures? And then they'll look at it closely, and they'll see that they removed all the patients who had seizures from the study, or who had a family history of seizures from the study. And the FDA is not the CDC. And the FDA will go, Yeah, but wait a minute. You restricted your consideration to this particular clinical group that had low risk of seizures. So your study doesn't show that there's no seizures? I thought your study showed that there's no seizures. That's why we have to report all of these to the vaccine manufacturers. So, and then
All
that
right.
gets the
Let's start
causality
a movement.
discussion going again. Yeah, let's call it the vaccine risk aware movement. Let's do this. Okay. So, all right. So they're trying to fool us into thinking vaccines are perfectly safe. And if you have all your injury and death claims go through a no fault, no discovery, taxpayer funded government compensation program so that neither the manufacturer nor the government ever admit causation, no product design flaws are required to be fixed, and no lessons are learned, and no vaccine administration practices are altered to avoid future similar events. Sounds like they got it all wrapped up there. This looks like a great presentation. You have a lot of information here. When is this going to be shared out?
We're getting close to having it done. It's going to have voiceover and then kind of made into like a little movie, so
Nice.
people can watch it. And then, so I'll give you the heads up. We're close to being done.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. So this one right here, I would have to agree. There is strong evidence to support safety concerns about vaccine-induced allergies, autoimmune disease, seizures, and more. Now notice, we played the CBC's video verbatim. We didn't edit it. We didn't modify it. And after having done this, I'm going to go back. I want to play that clip one more time. All right?
Okay.
All right, let's see. CBC clip. And
At this anti-vax rally in Washington.
It's the most significant medical issue in society today is the injury from vaccinations.
This is a war for our children. This is a war for their minds, for their bodies.
With many making false claims about the harm vaccines can cause.
I know that it can cause allergies, autoimmune issues.
There's spectrum autisms.
Eczema, seizures. These are things that are affecting children.
There's no evidence to support any of the concerns.
Timothy Caulfield, public health expert and author of a book debunking vaccine myths.
And not only is this isn't even speculative, this is what the science says.
Let's go through some of the claims. Allergies,
No evidence to support it,
autoimmune disease.
but no evidence.
What about seizures?
There are rare risks where kids do have seizures. You have to remember that kids can get that kind of seizure from a variety of ailments.
Fact, side effects are very rare. For every million vaccinations, only 1 to 2 severe allergic reactions. Despite these stats, nearly half of Canadians have concerns about vaccine safety. And according to the World Health Organization, that's known as vaccine hesitancy.
no. That's known as vaccine risk awareness. So, what did the CBC accomplish by putting a hit job on me and taking my words out of context? 1 in 2 Canadians are vaccine hesitant, or what we call vaccine risk aware. But 1 out of every 2 Canadians never heard about IPAC or James Lyons-Weiler. So when they broadcast this to 2 million Americans that they boasted that they covered, this show's been on for 47 years. I actually got like 24 emails from people saying, or contact through social media. I never heard of you before the CBC coverage. Thank you for what you're doing. How can we support what you're doing? And that's why I wrote that little song for them. So anyway, Dr. Timothy Caulfield, I want to play this last thing here. I don't have much more. Do you have much more that you'd like to share? We have this other thing here from Heidi Larson. You wanted to mention something about Heidi Larson at the World Health Organization meeting, right? So she's the U.S. representative at the World Health Organization.
I'm not sure her title. It has to do, she's head of something like the Vaccine Confidence Project.
Right.
Something like that.
That's a confidence building name,
so
by the
at
way.
that,
Vaccine Confidence. They're running a con job on us. Remember that.
yeah. So, I think you may have already spoken on other earlier show about how she said we need to stop calling them us anti-vaxxers, that and stop labeling it misinformation, because a lot of it is not misinformation. But then that slide that you put up there, that I just noted that she's paying attention. Marketing strategies can be helpful, but need caution. And she's talking about public health marketing strategies. Those in advertising may not, I can't see it with my picture in the way, may not appreciate the risks of over promotion. So we really have this danger of public health wanting to bolster faith in vaccination, hiring these top advertising agencies who are just putting out very easily provable false statements, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, over and over and over again. And that's a risk, because it can't, the science isn't upholding that. And she made note of that, which is interesting. Although she goes on to say some absolutely bizarre things later in that. The whole thing is crazy to watch.
It's actually it's where we were. It's where we were about 2 years ago, if you think about it, in terms of the topics that we were dealing with, the things that we were saying. I remember trying to get the point across to pharmaceutical companies and posting on social media and on my blog articles. You better get ahead of this, because if you don't get ahead of this, right, you're going to create such a huge vaccine risk awareness community. Because the worst thing that can happen, the worst scenario for them, is that they bet on the wrong horse. They played a game, they gambled, that vaccines were safe, that vaccines didn't cause autism, the vaccines didn't do all this. They gambled, and they lied to the parents as if they knew that it was true. They did vaccine safety studies to hide that. They manipulated the studies to hide those adverse events. The doctors are lying to the parents, but they don't know it. Many of them might not realize it. Or worse, they believe, like Dr. Timothy Caulfield might believe this due to argument from ignorance. Then the parents walk right into a life-altering, permanently life-altering, career-altering, income-altering, marriage-altering situation with kids that otherwise would not have been hurt by vaccines. They're denied by the doctor. It's denied by the government. It's denied, denied, denied. You want to piss off a bunch of people, hurt their kids, and say that it never happened. So when I went to the Allegheny County Board of Health meeting, one of my first things that I said to them was, don't tell these parents that come to talk to you that the vaccines didn't hurt their kids. That's just like saying to a parent, yeah, we know that your kid was crossing the street and got hit by a bus. And we got the make of the bus, the color of the bus, we got the driver's license of the man who was driving the bus, a bus driver. But it never happened. Buses don't do that. That's exactly what you're telling these parents. And the looks on their faces were like, but you're a scientist. How can you say this? I can say this because I remained a scientist. When I fell into vaccine risk awareness by writing that chapter, I remained objective. Okay? And now I'm at the point where I use a mix of very, very serious academic activities, research. I designed studies like Vax studies, analyze the data, working on manuscripts. I go deep dives in the literature. I bring out all the science forward, all of the science, all the mechanism science. And I do this because society needs to understand what it's doing to itself. But I also use a little bit of humor and irreverence. So with all due apologies, if this will play, I want to close out. Thank you, Bernadette, so much for your time tonight. How can people find ICWA? How can they join your organization?
Just go to informedchoicewa.org and you can find the button that said join and join us. And
all right,
let's return some scientific integrity to public health policy.
Let's do that. But let's also remember that all vaccine-injured families, all vaccine-injured moms and dads, all vaccine-injured children are human beings. And human beings have a sense of humor. So with all due love, affection, and apologies, I'm going to close out with this little bit right here. It comes to my mind every time we talk about the ingredients of vaccines. I'm sorry.
You don't understand. I've got proof. They need proof. I've seen it. I've seen it happening. They've got to tell people.
Tell them what?
The ocean's dying. The plankton's dying. It's people. Soylent Green is made out of people.
Sorry about that, folks. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. So sorry. I think about that
Soylent Green
scene
is
all the
people.
time. Soylent Green is people. The planet's dying. We're all doomed. And what is this coming to? So people know where I stand on all the issues. And Bernadette, I'm going to put your ticker up here. Oh, that's not yours. Let's put this one up here. There you go. Now, like I always do, I'm going to close out with this Nokomis song, Unbreaking Science. It's been a pleasure. You can stay on if you want to. No one will be able to see you, so you can dance if you care to.
Hi everyone.
Thanks a lot, Bernadette.
I'm your host, Dr. James
Thank you, Jack.
Lyons-Weiler, aka Dr. Jack. In this episode, we're going to review the evidence that science is broken. This is not a news story.
Will be told, the people will know the price of corporate science really taking its toll. Whistleblowers blow, public health data low. They say the science is settled, but how do they know?
Science.
Ask questions, critically think, you should try it. It's pure, unadulterated science. Unbreaking science.
Unbreaking science.
You can't deny it, and you sure can't buy it. Fact check, use your brain, don't be quiet. It's pure, unadulterated science. Unbreaking science.
Unbreaking science.
Using the tools of the trade to back up what we say. You can't be silent when it comes to unbreaking science. Let's light the truth up, next level ultraviolet. You got a hypothesis, do a critical test. Make an observation without being biased. Use logic and reason mixed with evidence. Look for patterns and results with significance. Calculate them numbers, real accurate. Or else your findings won't be legit. Don't cherry pick, but be skeptic. Cause broken science, it makes us sick. That science is being funded by the very same people that run it. So they can promote a product, so they can make that money. Try not to laugh, cause this ain't nothing funny. All these science-like activities, no joke, they call them studies. Hand-picking sample groups and no true placebos. Losing public trust the more and more that we know. The truth will be told, the people will know. The price of corporate science really taking its toll. Whistleblowers blow, public health data low. They say the science is settled, but how do they know?
Science.
Ask questions, critically think, you should try it. It's pure, unadulterated science. Unbreaking science.
Unbreaking science.
You can't deny it, you sure can't buy it. Fact check, use your brain, don't be quiet. It's pure, unadulterated science. Unbreaking science.